let's talk about the port in the network of nonprofits for artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence is simply a systematized algorithm that connects dots bigger than the conscious mind can do efficiently. And so one of the most powerful roles that AI can play in when it has enough data, and this is one of the reasons we need to collaborate with blockchain, is an AI will be able to identify big picture trends, threats, opportunities, and efficiencies that no single person can create. Meaning, once we have the nonprofit sector linked via blockchain, and a global picture exists of where the money is at, where the skills are at, where the time is at, where the resource is at, where this or that program is, where different permissions and power structures are at. Number one. Number two, a blockchain picture of the greatest pains and their life cycle. Pain has a life cycle. So, you inject someone with the HIV virus, you don't see anything for the first few hours. You don't see anything for the first few days, but you can know that hell is on the way over the next few years. So the life cycle of pain is very important to understand if you're going to respond to it. Because when you don't understand pain's life cycle and where you are on that spectrum, you can make decisions based on a present that has very little to do with the future. You said, what should be the AIDS budget based on the fact that I was just injected with AIDS and don't feel a thing, then you'd probably allocate nothing. It's not a big deal. But if you knew what the life cycle was of that pain and the cascade-like ripple effects that would lead to that experience and how they could be intercepted, if you knew that it's cheaper to intercept at this point than to not, you might prioritize something you don't feel at all, but understand as an urgent priority now because it's important even though it hasn't begun. When you understand the life cycle of winter, and you know for certain that somewhere between November 20th and December 20th, all hell's going to break loose. There's going to be 3 feet of snow. And now is your time when you're not feeling anything to gather wood, to make sure you've got emergency supplies, to stock up on batteries for that time, sometime over the winter when you're going to be snowed in for 3 or 4 days. When you understand that life cycle, you can avoid devastating pain by taking action at a time when you feel nothing. This is one of the actually very important things around business and northern countries. Northern countries, look at the Empire of Great Britain example, have historically established more empire than warm tropical countries precisely because winter is a teacher. Winter is a teacher that, middle of July, if you're not out there splitting wood, when it's fun to be on the beach, you're going to crash when the 3 feet of snow hits you. And then you want to get wood, but now you're trying to get wood that's wet and 3 feet of snow, and it's a losing battle. So northern climates teach this. But there's a lot of pain cycles in our planet's trajectory that we don't understand. And in the myopia of the moment, we are missing opportunities to invest and preempt intelligently and easily to create an enormous wave of grace over the next few decades. But we don't see it. And this is one of the more powerful ways to train AI, to have an artificial intelligence project pain wave cycles and intercept points and look at which pain wave cycles are going to hit most severely at what time, and what's the greatest return on investment in preempting those. Now, we have some brilliant minds doing this, but when people are involved, you have a lot of politics, you have a lot of bias, conscious and unconscious. When an algorithm that is trained in open source mathematics reveals these things, one has to be pretty gutsy and pretty dumb to fight mathematics, to fight core physics principles. And so there's a possibility of transcending a certain amount of politics, a certain amount of the human addictive myopia to, avoid the overwhelm of too much information, etc. There's never too much information for an algorithm. So looking at these opportunities and nurturing AI programs in this way and ensuring that by the time that we have a plug-and-play AI, where we set the value hierarchy, meaning speak to us in the language of reduced human suffering as a country. Okay, we're still myopia, we're still myopic, we're still focusing on our country as if pain doesn't bleed in from, but we're focusing on our country. Okay, what are the intercept points in our country? What are the pain cycles? What are the biggest threats to our national well-being over the next 10 years, over the next 20 years? How can we respond? Okay, let's widen the field. Globally, if I wanted to spend $1 and reduce more human suffering than any other way I could spend that dollar, what is it? And who do I send it to at what time to have that effect? And what is the effect? Based on the probability field projected by the algorithm based on data. We need to start gathering data in a format that is universal and can be digested by AI. And ironically, by the way, with all the, very reasonably dubious, the concerns about the dubious nature of the U.S. government, just creating teraflop upon teraflop of, spying on every American household, their phone calls, their emails, etc. There is a history in government and in the military, whether it's with the internet or phones or, explosives, computers. There is a history of our paranoid fear leading us to waste vast amounts of money. In the U.S., it's 26 times more than the next country at this point, on, the threat. It's a little funny with the U.S. because we are, in many ways, the largest threat to a number of countries around the world, but to preempt threat. So we spend tons of public money to militarize. We tried to militarize DMT. We tried to militarize LSD. But what we end up doing, because the military is ultimately not the answer, but technology is the answer. What we end up doing is creating useful technologies so that we can kill people, running into limitations around that to some extent, and then those technologies, which are much more effectively applied to create human well-being, leak out into the public. And so in a roundabout way, by the time we have effective agreements between nonprofits, by the time that we have blockchains with common data points, where we're going to get the teraflop upon teraflop of information about human well-being patterns is very likely in the public trust of the teraflops of data illegally gathered by our intelligence agencies that do not have the time, the energy, or the skill to intelligently use that information in any military sense. But the AIs can use this information to create new levels of human well-being. So this is a key part of this matrix of synergy, where we can literally have 100 times more potent impact per dollar spent than we have right now, a point where it becomes so exciting to look at the trajectory of well-being created by a single dollar, a single pound note, that it's fun to bask in that probability field, to see how that's being spent. Thanks for joining me on this episode of 10X Nonprofit. I'll see you on the next video.